So much, Vicki. It's a pleasure to be here. I always enjoy getting together with your folks. So today is a very, I'm going to call it a personally reflective kind of webinar. Sometimes we do things that are basic skills that we need in the workplace, and confidence. We certainly need that in the workplace, but it's a lot more about you than it is your workplace. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Please feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat box. And this is one of those topics too, that if you have any questions that come up that you'd rather not put in the chat box, or they're a little bit more detailed, feel free to always drop me an email. I'm happy to respond to that. And you'll find my email address at the bottom of your handouts that Vicki sent with the email that accessed this room today. The Zoom link was with the same email where she attached the handouts. So hopefully you've downloaded those. You can go back and check, or you can take your own notes today. But again, always feel free to contact me. I tell people that since I don't know you and I don't know your particular situation, I can give you objective feedback. And if you like it, you can use it. And if you don't, you can delete it, and I won't know either way. So it'll be a win-win. So feel free always to do that, whether it's about this topic or some other topic. So let's take a look at this. Working out how to build your confidence muscle. I've used a couple of quotes in here, and one of them to me speaks to the idea of confidence, and that is by Theodore Roosevelt. Each time we face our fear, which is really what a lack of self-confidence is, isn't it? We gain strength, courage, and confidence in the doing. Here's what I want you to hear about this quote. It doesn't matter whether we're perfect at whatever we faced our fear about. In other words, if we face a fear of speaking in public, I don't know many people that are perfect at that, but those people still gain strength and courage and confidence in the doing. That's where the confidence is. So right up front, I'm going to tell you that a 1-hour webinar is not going to build your confidence muscle. It takes practice, doesn't it? So that's what we're going to look at today. The first question I have for you is, why would you like to build your confidence muscle? Would you type that into the chat box? What attracted you about this webinar today when you signed up for it? Hopefully you all are typing frantically. Joanne said, ideas to increase myself, to be your best self, right, Joanne? A desire to move forward. A lack of confidence can hold us back, can it, Tammy? Because people aren't confident in the fact that we can actually do whatever it is we're saying we're going to do. I know I've experienced that, and probably you all have too. Teresa said, a desire to be better at it, just better at having confidence when you're in different situations, to be able to jump in and try. I like that word, Tony Ann. We're going to at least try. Again, it's in the trying, isn't it? It's in the doing of whatever it is we're trying to build our confidence in that actually does build that confidence. Be more assertive with others, Kay Delisle said. And assertiveness is impossible. I'm just going to use that word. It's a very dramatic, big word, but it really is impossible if you don't have any confidence, right? Because I can't stand my ground and be firm with you if I have no confidence in myself. To get over imposter syndrome, and that's almost the polar opposite, isn't it, Michelle? The polar opposite of confidence might be imposter syndrome. I don't feel qualified. There are times, folks, that I still don't feel qualified doing what I'm doing. And as Vicki told you in my bio, it's been well over 15 years, but I'll get into a situation, even if it's information that I have absorbed over the years and I'm passionate about it. If I'm with a new client, my confidence seeps out a little bit. I'm just going to be honest with you. Anybody that's been in my webinars knows, I'll tell you, a lot of my programs are built around the fact that I struggle in some of those areas. So imposter syndrome has always been an issue for me, and building my confidence helps me overcome it. It does not help me keep from having it necessarily, but it certainly isn't to the degree that it used to be. Rachel said, well, I'm good at my job. I'm not very confident about it. I'd like to be more confident about myself when I need to be. And we're going to look closely at the reasons you should be confident in that, Rachel. So let's take a look. What specific areas do you struggle with? In other words, do you struggle with difficult patrons? Do you struggle with speaking up in meetings? Do you struggle with meeting new people? Do you struggle with doing presentations? Do you struggle with upper management? Think about that. Now we're going to start to drill down a little bit. We all know we need more confidence, but certainly there are probably some areas where whatever we're dealing with rolls off of our backs. Joanne said yes, so I don't know if that means yes to everything I mentioned or what it might mean, but there might be some areas where you really don't struggle as much. Maybe it's with relationships or something like that where your confidence is pretty strong. But the reason I ask you to kind of zero in is so that you know when you need to use the tips we're going to talk about. You know when you need to apply the information that you're going to think about yourself today. Tony Ann said to see the whole picture. And sometimes that's a matter of our own personalities, isn't it, Tony Ann? Some of us see the big picture. Some of us just see the details. And because we just see the details and somebody else is talking about the big picture, we can be less confident. Or we see the big picture and somebody else is really going into detail. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't have any clue what they're talking about. And then my confidence leaks out. Delegating is a big one, Kay. Because if we aren't delegating, I'm just saying K period. So you know who I'm talking to. If we aren't delegating because we don't have confidence, we really are not only doing a disservice to ourselves, but we're doing a disservice to other people, aren't we? Because it shows a lack of trust and a lack of confidence in them, or that's how they perceive it, along with the lack of confidence in ourselves. So I'm just going to pop these up here and just make a note to yourself of any areas that you think might apply to you. I mentioned several of them, but there are times, because I'm a high introvert, that even meeting new people causes my confidence to sort of shrivel up, if you will, because I really don't have a drive to meet a lot of new people because I am an introvert. I enjoy my quiet time. I enjoy meeting people one-on-one. But when it's about a big group, I have a neighbor that's very outgoing, very sociable, you know, the life of the party, so to speak. And when I'm around her, because of that, and because she seems to know everybody, and she only moved into this community 3 months before I did, I lose my confidence a little bit. Isn't that silly? Because there's no reason for that, is there? So just know what areas you need to think about as we go through today. Now, here's another question I want you to think pretty deeply about. You all came today, you all registered. So you had the confidence in yourself to actually do something about this, to show up today and to try to make a difference in your life. So my question to you is, it probably didn't just occur to you that you need to work on your confidence when you saw the announcement for this webinar. You've probably known that for a while. So what was your obstacle that you haven't worked on this before? What might your obstacles be as far as the reason you may not move forward as far as you would like in building your confidence? For example, I think this is a huge one. You just heard me do this, didn't you, when I talked about my neighbor? Comparison. Wanting others to agree, and that's not always going to happen, is it, Tammy? And the real growth comes when, in confidence level, when we realize that people may not agree, but we're confident enough to give them our opinion on something or to give them our idea on something. Myself and fear of rejection. Absolutely, Rachel. And that fear of rejection kind of loops into comparison too, doesn't it? Because I'm comparing myself to somebody else and I think I'll be rejected. I'm reading a book right now about being enough. And as I said, I work on these things right along with you all. It's an area that I've worked on for years. And in this book, it talks about what words did you hear when you were a child? And I had a dysfunctional family. So the words I heard were, we didn't want 3 kids. And I was the 3rd child. The words I heard were that my brother and sister were named after my mom and dad. I wasn't named after anybody. The only professional portrait we have in our family is of my mom and dad, my brother and sister. So I heard that when I was younger, and it's never going to leave me. I mean, I can't forget those things, but I have to keep working on how that has affected me over the years. Tony Ann said, afraid to take a chance. And that's a great comment. Why are we afraid to take a chance? Because of comparison, because of being rejected, like Rachel mentioned, because other people won't agree with whatever we're doing, all the things y'all mentioned. It's a fear, isn't it? It's a fear of rejection of some sort. So when I was making my own notes as I developed this program, I put down comparison. Here's a big one. If you're taking notes, be sure to write this down. If you're using the handouts, circle this one when you write it down, because self-talk can delete or lessen our confidence quicker than anybody else's opinion or rejection or anything else. Because what do we do inside our heads? We say, you really think you can do this? Just think about that tiny little statement I just made. You really think you can do this? You're saying to yourself. And when you say that, you're not going to argue with yourself unless you're very self-aware. And that's why we're here today, to make you more self-aware so that you can say, yeah, I do. And even if I don't do it perfectly, which is another issue for some of us, is we want perfection. And if we don't have perfection, we lose our confidence. But truly, if we don't do it perfectly, as long as we do it to the best of our ability, that should build our confidence. But let me take a little aside here. Many of you in the room, or at least some of you, in the behavioral tendencies profile that I use, and some of you heard me talk about this before, because to me, it's foundational to everything we do in life, all of our interactions, all of our feelings and emotions, our behavioral tendencies. My top tendency is called a powerful choleric, which means I want to be in control and I want to just get it done. My secondary is called a perfect melancholy, which means now I want to get it done perfectly. And many of you in the room might be perfect melancholies, because as I've given that assessment over the years to hundreds of library folks, the number one category in each group I give it to is, except for one meeting that I had, it's always perfect melancholy. So that might be an obstacle for you, that I'm not going to do it till I can make sure it's going to be right. Well, in today's world, that might not ever happen. So we have to be willing to take that chance, don't we, that Tony Ann was talking about. Past experiences, I mentioned my upbringing to you. For you, it just may be something in one relationship with a supervisor where you never felt valued or you never felt appreciated, and therefore it made your confidence be a little unsteady. So think about your past experiences. A lack of a support system. One of the things that has happened to me in recent years is that I lost my support system. My husband passed away 5.5 years ago, and he was my biggest cheerleader, my biggest support system, my biggest encourager. And when he died, my first thought was, I should just go get a job. I don't consider my work a job. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I would get a steady paycheck. I would have health benefits. Forget that this is what I love to do and what I feel like I was meant to do. But I lost my support system. And so my confidence went away. It was a scary time until I thought, you know what? I'm just going to take the chance. Like somebody said earlier, Tony said, afraid to take the chance. I thought, I'm going to take the chance to keep doing this because it's what I love to do. So know that if your support system is gone, you can be your own support system. Your upbringing, which I mentioned before, whatever else might be your obstacle. We need to acknowledge obstacles to building our confidence, or we will never build our confidence, because we need to see them when they're coming at us so that we can challenge them. That's a big part of building your confidence. So now I'm going to ask you to brag a little bit. I want you to think about some areas you can think about while you're building your confidence muscle. Type into the chat box one of your gifts, one of the things that you think you just is so natural. People tell you you're gifted at it. What's one of your gifts? Listening, Michelle. That's a great one to have, especially in today's world. Nobody does that anymore. Empathy. That's great, Kay. Smile and say hello, with friendliness and courtesy and manners, right, Joanne? Being a team player. You see, we're putting these things in as if, doesn't everybody listen and have empathy and smile and say hello and be a team player? No, they don't. They don't. So that's a gift if it comes natural to you. Make sure you recognize that. That should help build your confidence right there, the things that you typed in. How about your special talents? Maybe it's something about music or creativity, or you love details. Justin said kindness. Thank you, Justin, because that's sure missing in today's world, isn't it? That's a gift when somebody has true kindness. What's your talent? Your natural aptitude, a knack for something. Organized and detailed. That's a talent. I know so many people that say, I just can't get organized. Now, are you hearing some negative self-talk there? They're never going to build their confidence in getting more organized because they've told themselves they can't. Anybody else? A talent? How about a skill that you've developed over the years? Maybe it's not your favorite thing to do, and maybe you're not naturally gifted at it, but you've gotten really good at it because you've worked at it as a skill. Maybe you are great at Excel spreadsheets. I talked to somebody a few months ago, and she said, you know, I get assigned the Excel spreadsheets all the time. She said, I'm really good at it, but I really don't enjoy it that much. So it's a skill she's developed because it's part of her job. Efficient and detail oriented. Customer service is a skill, isn't it? It maybe even cross over into a gift, right, Tony? Because if you can listen and have that empathy and smile and do all the things that we've already talked about, be a team player and be kind, then customer service actually overlaps those other things. But you could actually be good at customer service without really being the greatest listener or having the most empathy. Michelle said, I'm referred to as the Polaris Queen. There you go. Software program. It's a skill, isn't it? It's not like you got up one day when you were out of high school and said, you know what? I think I want to be the Polaris Queen. I seem to have a natural affinity for Polaris. You didn't even know about it at that time. So I hope you're paying attention, folks, because this is how you build your confidence. We are so quick to make a list of all the things we cannot do, to make a list of all of our negative attributes, to make a list of the reasons why we'll never be good at XYZ. I'm challenging you today to make a list of the reasons why you should have confidence. Hear me clearly. I'm not saying you should have confidence in every area of life. I have no confidence in the medical field. I don't mean I don't have confidence in medical people. I'm telling you, I am not a good medical person. I have helped take care of my sister, my mom, my best friend, my husband. I always felt out of my comfort zone during those episodes. I will never have a lot of confidence there. So I'm not telling you that you're going to gain confidence in every area of life. I'm telling you to recognize where you should have confidence, stand on that, and build your confidence to make yourself live your best life, to help yourself build your best life. Other things, what about knowledge? What have you learned at work besides a skill? What kind of knowledge have you gained? What kind of interest do you have that gives you certain knowledge? I'm trying to get back into watercolor painting. I am not really creative. It's not a natural gift. It's not even a talent, but I'm already learning more about it. So I'm building my knowledge base. I'm very fortunate because of what I do. I add to my knowledge, it seems like daily. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it feels like it because I do so much reading and so much research. So what kind of knowledge have you added? Maybe in the last, let's just say in the last 5 years, what kind of knowledge have you added for yourself to your life? It could be cooking. It could be gardening. It could be animal care. It could be knowledge about how to be better in a relationship. What kind of knowledge have you added? Because there are people that don't care to add any knowledge to life. Have you added any knowledge? That's a little different than education. When we think of education, we think about actual schooling, but it's not necessarily college. It's not necessarily that kind of schooling, academic. It might be a certificate. crafting resumes. That's knowledge, isn't it, Justin? Because to do a little aside here, years ago, when I first started doing training in Florida, way back when, I was doing a little bit with libraries, but didn't know a lot of people. So the local college asked me to come and work with their corporate training division to help do job skills programs. And I had to really immerse myself in what was the best way to do that at that time, because every resume I saw was, we have an objective, we have this, it rambled. And so I really got, as Justin said, I really gained a lot of knowledge about how to help people target their resumes. Is it a talent? Maybe it's gotten a little bit to that point. It's not a natural gift, but it's part of my knowledge. And included in that was education to learn that knowledge. Tony said things change every day, so it's constant learning. It should be, shouldn't it? But I know people that aren't interested in learning. I have a friend that moved into this community, and when you move, if you've lived in Florida for a while, you get the homestead exemption, you get portability, all that kind of stuff. And so, hey, that's about my finances. I'm going to get every penny I can get. She has lived here long enough to file all of those things, but has not filed them. So even though things change every day, some people choose not to learn. So if you're doing that, and I know you are because you're in the room today, put one notch on the side of your confidence meter. Rachel said learning a lot about BibFrame, a catalog programming. There you go. And that program might go away in 2 years or 1 year or 5 years. And when that happens, Rachel, you're just going to switch and learn something new, aren't you? Because part of knowledge and education and all those things we've already talked about, part of that is your willingness to do that. So don't dismiss that, because your willingness should build your confidence. Now, I am not willing to skydive. I'm not willing to bungee jump. I don't like physical risk, but I am willing to learn things about things that I'll never be great at. What are your behavioral tendencies? As I mentioned earlier, if you've ever been with me in webinars where I've talked about, people call it personalities or temperaments, or I like to call it behavioral tendencies, because when we call it personalities, to me, it sounds like it's all etched in stone, and nothing is for any of us, is it? Our behaviors are different based on our upbringing and based on our experiences and even our age groups or our stage of life or whatever. But if we understand our behavioral tendencies, that can help us understand why we struggle with having more confidence. It can help us learn how to be more confident. My powerful side just says, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it. And if it's not perfect, you'll figure it out. But my perfect side says, but if it's not perfect, people will reject you. People won't like what you did. And so understanding that about myself, I can overcome it because I can change my self-talk. You all can change your self-talk. I bet within the next, I'm going to say just a week, you're going to hear negative self-talk. If you're here today because you know you need to increase your confidence, or you would at least like to increase your confidence, then your self-talk has probably affected your ability to do something. So I want you to think about that the next time you start talking negatively to yourself. Well, I've never done that, and I can't do that, and I don't have the education, and I don't have the skills, and I'm not old enough, and I don't have the experience. Stop. Because it's not going to benefit your confidence level. Take what you know about yourself and use that to be your best self. That's what I'm saying today, to be your best self, not like anybody else, not perfect, just to be your best self. Work in your strengths. Because I know I'm a powerful perfect, I try to work in my strengths. I try to do quality work, and I try to get it done on time so that I don't disappoint people. I like to take control of that. That's a strength. Now, hear me clearly. If we overdo our behavioral tendencies, they can become weaknesses. So I like to be in control, but I can't control everything. And I need to recognize that, because it does get me, oddly enough, it gives me a sense of confidence to know that I can let go of certain things. Now, I didn't used to think that way. Thought I had to control everything. So understand your behavioral tendencies. And just so you know what those four are, they're called popular, powerful, perfect, and peaceful. And those words will give you a hint of understanding yourself. I like people to think about their top category and there's secondary category because we're all a blend of all four, really. But for me, I'm very high in the powerful and fairly high in the perfect, and I have very little in popular and peaceful. So I need to understand that about myself. You know what? If I put myself in situations where I need to be the center of attention and I need to be popular, my confidence is going to go out the window. And so am I, because it's not going to be a happy ending. Popular, powerful, perfect, and peaceful. You can actually take this assessment now on the internet. And I believe the website is called thepersonalities.com, but it's $4 online. I love the paper assessment because it has a lot more information in it, but it gives you that glimpse. So probably the website, I'm sorry I didn't write it down before I came into the room today, thepersonalities.com. But if you look up Wired That Way by Marita Littauer, like you see here on the screen, that will pull up the information you need. But it has been life-changing information for me because I understood my strengths, which helped me build my confidence. But I also understood that if I abused those strengths by overusing them, that it would actually be detrimental to the level of confidence that I have. So other areas to think about. What are some experiences you've had that maybe somebody else hasn't had? Would you share that in the chat box? No comparison allowed. We're not comparing ourselves to each other. We're just saying, here's an experience I had that maybe nobody else has ever experienced. I know you're all typing for me. I would just say here when I mentioned comparison, I've got this little cafe picture here because I did have the good fortune of traveling to France. Now everybody I talk to seems to be traveling around the world basically. And if I compare myself to them, I really am not excited about traveling anymore. So then I start to feel like I'm less than, because really that's what confidence is. I don't feel like I'm less than just because I don't want to travel anymore. But what kind of experiences have you had? Did you speak in front of a large group? Okay, and none of our experiences are truly unique, are they, Kay? I'm sure it's not unique, but being a widow with 5 kids is an experience that taught me a lot. Absolutely. When I became a widow, I didn't have any children. And even then, there's a lot to learn, isn't there? And you grew, didn't you? And that should have filled up your little confidence jar. And then things would happen along the way that would take things out of your confidence jar, right? Because things always sort of smack us in the face. Tony Ann said, owning a business was great experience. Volunteering gave me exposure to many things. Yeah. So owning a business, volunteering, raising 5 kids by yourself, think about, you have no reason to have any lack of confidence, right? With any of those things. I can remember I was talking to a friend of my husband's. He stays in touch usually weekly and has way before my husband died. He stayed in touch with him and now he stays in touch with me. And he sometimes will comment just kind of out of the blue that he always admired us because we were willing to be self-employed, because it's a little scary. And it indeed does build your confidence if you can hang in there, but it can be scary. What other experiences do you have? Write it down. If you don't want to share today, you've had them. The fact that you're not sharing, I got my graduate degree at UF at what I will say is a very advanced age, because my husband had already been diagnosed. He was recovering from cancer, but he had some issues from the side effects, and I needed a plan B. I didn't even have a degree when that happened. And it was just it was more than that, 9 years ago that I got my MBA. So that's an experience. Going back to school, I joke, but it's not a joke. I walked into a classroom, 65 people, average age of 26. I was old enough to be their mom. For some of them, maybe even old enough to be their grandmother, honestly. When one of the professors said, I have a wedding ring here that's older than everybody in this class, I just spoke up and said, I doubt it. Because I had the confidence to do that. I figured if I was sitting in the room, I might as well have the confidence to acknowledge it was going to be a struggle for me to do that. But that's an experience that I had that helped my confidence level. I will tell you, in the midst of it, It just about drained me of confidence because it was very difficult to do. I don't regret it a minute. Do I want to go back and do it again? I do not. How about your upbringing? What was special about your upbringing that would build your confidence? Support and love. That's great, Joanne. Because when I look at this one, I struggle with this one. I have to look inside myself to find something good about my upbringing. And because I wanted approval and I wanted to be loved, I worked really hard in school and I got really good grades. But during that time, it didn't even help my confidence even a little bit. Now I look back and I'm thankful for that, but it didn't help my confidence because I hear what happened. I didn't get the approval I was seeking. I can't gain confidence just because I get somebody else's approval. It can help, certainly, especially with supervisors and things like that. Tony said my mom would say, be a doctor, not a nurse, or a principal, not a teacher. The world is your oyster. There you go. It's exactly right. And then again, be a nurse if that's what you'd rather be, because the doctors start to get into the weeds, don't they? They start to get into all the insurance issues and all that stuff. So it's great that she just said, do whatever you want to do because you can. Rachel said, as the oldest, I've always been the responsible one. Rachel is the youngest. I've always been the responsible one. I helped take care of my dad when he was sick. I was only 26. My brother and sister were both older. I'm the one he asked when they said, you've got lung cancer and here are your options. What should you do? What do you want to do? He asked me. So that was a lot of a burden at a young age. But you know what? It kind of gave me a little bit of confidence from that perspective. Not happy confidence. Michelle said, same for me, youngest, I'm responsible for everything. It's funny, isn't it? People say, why don't you teach the Enneagram? I said, because I don't fall into the Enneagram categories. I'm so outside them, I can't do them. Justin said, going to cyber school. There you go. Help me become a self-learner. Absolutely, Justin. You've got to take initiative, don't you? You can skate through online, just like you can skate through in class. But if you really want to learn, you take initiative. That should build up your confidence that you were able to do that. So be thinking about all those things because your confidence is listed in this chat box today. Your seed of confidence, I will say, your seed of confidence is listed in the chat box. So these are all things that can help feed your confidence level if you will acknowledge them and if you will be honest about them. It's not that in any of these categories things were perfect. It's just that you grew as a person. You will never have more confidence without growing as a person, period, the end. So what are some ways we can actually now build our confidence? I alluded to this earlier. Challenge the negative self-talk. If you're here today, you've probably had negative self-talk. I had negative self-talk for the first 2-3 decades of my life. And it was probably at that time 75% negative. And then I got a boss when I was fairly young who gave me more responsibility and some authority. And even though he was a bit of a manipulator, he actually enabled me to build my confidence level to the point where I quit that job and started my own business. So challenge the negative self-talk. I am absolutely dead serious about this, folks. The next time you hear your voice inside your own head saying, what were you thinking? I can't believe you did something so stupid. I said to myself this morning or yesterday morning, something happened and I said out loud, well, that was stupid. And then I said out loud, I'm not stupid, but what just happened was stupid. So you challenge the negative self-talk, right? Rachel said, I had negative self-talk until a friend said, don't treat my friend that way. I don't like it. I love that, Rachel. I love that. Because you, and people have said to me, you wouldn't treat a friend like that. Why are you treating yourself that way? And that's what it's about, isn't it? So fire the committee. And when I talk about this, a psychologist friend of mine was actually team training in that job skills program that I mentioned. And so she did a segment of the program of a couple of hours, and these people had all lost their jobs. They all felt a lack of confidence. They all felt maybe even a little resentful or bitter. And so she said, you need to fire your committee. And everybody's looking at, well, what are you talking about? I'm not on any committee. She said, there's a committee inside your head. Who's on your committee? You see, for many, many years, and still to some degree, my dad was on my committee, making me not feel wanted or valued or appreciated. Now, let me be very clear. He was an honorable man. He worked hard. He gave me a roof over my head, and he taught me a hard work ethic and good morals. And I'm very thankful for that. But childhood was not a fun experience. So I had to kick him off of my committee. And I put my husband on there. And my husband, who is no longer with me, is still on my committee. My sister is on my committee because she was one of my cheerleaders. She passed away the year after my husband died. You need to fire the people on your committee that are not serving you well as far as your confidence level. Think about that right now in your own mind. Who do you need to kick off of your committee? And I will say, who are you going to replace them with? Type somebody into the chat that you want on your committee inside your head. They can be famous. They can be dead. They can be somebody you'll never meet. But who do you want on your committee? Because that's who you need to tap into the next time there's a bit of a lag in your confidence. Go ahead and type it into the chat box. Anthony, Tony said. I have a good friend that's very encouraging to me as well. I get to go see her in a couple weeks. Who else? Michelle said, my boyfriend, he's always so encouraging and supportive. There's nothing quite like it, is there, Michelle? To know that there's another person. Here's the thing with people that are close to you, like my friend and my sister, and my husband. The people that are close to you know all your warts, and they still believe you've got what it takes. Do you believe that? You know all your warts too, but somehow our warts get bigger when they're inside our own heads. So hang on to the people. Make sure you build relationships with the people that are going to build you up. My niece, bless her heart, since my sister has passed away, has sort of stepped into that role, if you will. And I do the same for her. She got a big promotion a few weeks ago, and I sent her Norman Love chocolates to celebrate that. And so I'm trying to make sure I'm on her committee, not because it's, oh, look at me, I'm on her committee, more so that I keep her confidence level up, because sometimes things do kind of bring you down, don't they? So set and achieve some goals. I'm not talking about I'm going to run for Congress, unless that's what you want to do. I don't know why anybody would want to these days, but set and achieve some goals. Maybe it's just a goal of, what am I going to accomplish today? Today I came in and I'm working on a program for a newish client. And I thought, well, if I just get the handouts somewhat organized today, I'll feel really good about that. So I got right down to business this morning and I got through the entire handout. So the handout is now accomplished. You know what? That built my confidence level, because I set a goal for today, knowing that I had a webinar coming up, knowing that I'm not after a webinar, because the adrenaline really gets pumping. I'm usually a little bit tired after a webinar, and I'm not thinking quite as clearly. And so I knew that after the webinar wouldn't be a good time to work on that. So I did it first thing this morning. I did it. It makes me have some confidence, not because I didn't think I couldn't do it, but because I accomplished the goal that I set for myself. Build competence. If there's an area that you do feel less than in, what can you do to build your competence in that area? I feel less than with technology pretty much every day. My confidence can be drained away simply by the technology we have to use nowadays. Vicki and I were talking about this earlier before we signed on to the actual webinar, and technology just does whatever it wants to do. And so I can lose my confidence, which makes me feel like I'm not competent in certain situations with technology. I'm slowly getting to the part, because I see, somebody said everything is always changing. I see all the changes that are happening pretty much monthly with technology. And I'm slowly getting to the part where even the people who say they are technology gurus get it wrong sometimes. So build your competence, whatever that looks like to you. If there's a certain area of your job that you're not quite sure about, and it's okay the way you're doing it now, but maybe you would be recognized for a promotion or something that you're looking for, or more responsibility or a new project. If you got better at it, build it. You can do that. Catalog what you've accomplished. If I ask you today, if we were face to face and I said, take out a piece of paper and just start making a list of everything you've accomplished in your life, excluding anything to do with your family, because typically what I hear is I raised good children. That's a great accomplishment, but it's not you, is it? I want you to write down one of your accomplishments. So would you type that into the chat box? Catalog what you've accomplished. One accomplishment. I told you mine was getting my degree at an advanced age. That was a real accomplishment for me. First person in my family to get a college degree, all that kind of stuff. Took me a while, but I got there. What have you accomplished? Type it into the chat box, please. So you know how that feels, don't you, Kay? I was actually a little older than that. Now you're going to start doing math in your head to figure out how old I am now. Earning a degree, period, is an accomplishment. Earning a certificate, like a SHRM certificate or anything like that, is an accomplishment. Learning new software, when it can be very convoluted, is an accomplishment. Getting a degree, any kind of a degree, absolutely, Justin. And you know what? It's an accomplishment to get out of high school. Think about everything you learned in the 12 years you were in grades 1 through 12. That's an accomplishment. Working in a job I'm passionate about is an accomplishment, isn't it, Teresa? Because not many people get to do that. If you look at the studies, it's something like 82% of people go to work to get a paycheck and they're disengaged. I am passionate about what I do. I want to make a difference for people. Here's the thing. If I look at the people I don't make a difference for because they attend and then they just dismiss it, I can lose my confidence. So you know what I do? I have a kudos file. And I don't think I have that on here anywhere, but I have a kudos file in my computer and some that are printed, or thank you notes that I've gotten, so that on the days where I feel like I didn't reach anybody, I can look at that and say, you know what? I am accomplishing something. Michelle said I recovered from a divorce and got back into the workforce after a 6-year absence. Now I've been in my dream job for the last 7 years. There you go. That's a huge accomplishment, because kind of life dreams get really squashed sometimes, don't they? And I know people who then are victims for the rest of their lives. Instead of saying an accomplishment to me is having something awful happen and picking yourself up and saying, I'm not only going to just get through this, I'm going to get better through this. You've heard that saying, I could get bitter or I could get better. I'm going to choose better every time. Admit mistakes so you can learn from them. If I've made a mistake in something that I've done with technology or whatever, I hope people tell me what's going on so I can learn from it rather than try to cover it up. Now, as a powerful perfect, I don't like number 6. I don't want to make any mistakes. And I certainly don't want to be called out on them. How dare you? Accept that. I can't improve if I don't know where the mistake is. So accept the mistake, admit it, and then you learn from it. Here's another one that people get challenged by, especially if your confidence is a little wobbly. Accept compliments graciously, humbly, but graciously. If people tell you, you are the best I've ever seen at your job, smiling and saying, thank you so much. You can't imagine how much that means to me. That's accepting that compliment graciously instead of belittling it by saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, you should see me tomorrow or whatever. That's not gracious, is it? They feel good about giving you that compliment. Make them feel even better by accepting it graciously. It's okay to tell them what it means to you to have that compliment. Number 8, stretch yourself. Yes, physically, that's good for us. We all need to be exercising. Sorry, that's going to come up here in a little bit. But I'm talking about stretching yourself as a person. Talk to people you're not really comfortable around. Go to events and things like that you're not really that comfortable doing. I don't like to be around big crowds. So there was an air show here last week in Jacksonville. That would have been fun, but I don't like to be squashed in among thousands of people. So I didn't go. But I'll go to our club and I'll meet people and I'll do this and I'll do that to stretch myself. The first couple months I lived here, I was intimidated by not knowing my way around. I'd never even been to this area, much less lived here. And I just slowly started to stretch. Now, when you stretch yourself, you don't pull out and break yourself, right? You don't do something that's just going to devastate you if you don't get it right. You just move a little bit further. Think of a rubber band. You don't stretch it till it breaks. You just stretch it a little bit. So stretch yourself. Take informed risks. I was going to take risks, but I want you to think about them first because I don't want you to set yourself up for failure. So take an informed risk. I did a lot of research before I bought this house. There were some stumbling blocks with the pandemic. It took 11 months, yada, yada. But it was an informed risk because I have a notebook full of research. Doesn't mean everything's going to go right, though, does it? So I had confidence when I actually made the move. Acknowledge when you do the simple things. Well, yeah, handouts aren't a big deal, but I did them and I did them well, and I think they'll be meaningful for people. So acknowledge that. Set the small goals, track them, achieve them, and celebrate them. Once again, I'm struggling with my weight. After I moved, I gained several pounds, and I will lose a couple pounds and then I go back up a little bit. And I've got a doctor's appointment Thursday, and I was trying to lose some weight. And this morning I did. Now, I'm not going to celebrate with a big piece of chocolate cake. That sounds really good. But I am going to celebrate and acknowledge that I've managed to lose a couple of pounds. Does it mean it'll stay there? Maybe not, but that's okay. I set the goal, I tracked it, I achieved it. People say to me, don't weigh yourself. Well, if I don't weigh myself, that's not going to be good for me. It's not going to be healthy for me. I'm just one of those people that needs to keep track. So whatever that is, set a goal at work that you learn this kind of program, or you learn this, or you do this, or you accomplish this. Learn to deal with failure. If you're not failing, you're not trying. It's true, isn't it? Do something that is risky. Like I said, it's an informed risk, but you might fail at it. Deal with it. Gain confidence from the fact that you got through whatever it was you failed at. See yourself as you want to be. Again, forget the committee. Forget comparing yourself to somebody else. Who do you want to be? How do you picture your best self? Are you happy with who you are and how you're living your life? Are you living it with integrity? Do you work hard? Are you learning and growing? I know y'all are. You're here today, but that should give you confidence because you can see yourself as you want to be. Congratulate yourself when something good happens. Affirm yourself, celebrate yourself, compliment yourself. All of the above. I don't care if you physically reach your hand around and pat yourself on the back, because somebody needs to. When you do something that you feel good about, congratulate yourself. Care about yourself and for yourself. Care about yourself and for yourself. And here comes that dreaded word, exercise. I would so much more not want to exercise if I had what I feel would be a choice, but I don't think I do. I live by myself. My 2 kitties depend on me. I need to stay as healthy as I can. So I exercise, typically 5 to 6 days a week. Somebody told me years ago, once you start doing it, you would miss it if you stop doing it, and you will love it. And they lied, because I never have gotten to the point where I loved it. But I now use my e-reader. It makes it a little more tolerable. And I congratulate myself when I exercise because I feel like I'm doing something that I'd rather not do, but I know it's good for me because I care about myself. Eat well. It's so funny. I have a friend that comes to visit occasionally, and she always makes comments about how she's gaining weight and how she's tired and how she has these aches and pains. I mean, that happens to us as we age. But she told me a few weeks ago, she said, I got a treadmill, but I haven't been on it. and she'd had it for a couple months. I'm not judging because I get it. It's not fun. And then she tells me, I just graze all day. I don't eat meals. So we need to take care of ourselves, don't we? Nobody else is going to do this for us. Nobody else is going to eat well for us, and nobody else is going to exercise. Nobody else is going to get sleep for us. You know what your sleep requirements are. Mine are 7.5 hours. 7's too little and 8's almost too much. So 7.5 hours is my sweet spot. And I try to make sure I get that kind of sleep. Traveling throws me way off base. I can go to bed at the right time, but I don't sleep well in hotel beds. So that throws me off a bit. So I know that. I come home, I try to get my rest because you know what? If I'm tired, I'm grumpy. If I'm tired and grumpy, I don't feel confident. Why would I? Be aware of how you dress and your grooming. I know I might step on some toes here, but I've read studies that say one of the issues when people start working at home is that they decide not to shower, they decide not to change their clothes, and it affects somehow in our brains how productive we are. So just throwing that out there to be careful about that, how you dress and how you groom yourself. Know that you're equal, you're enough, you're able, you're capable. Just know that. However you're moving through the world, you're equal to everybody else that's moving through the world. Some people might have bigger positions, bigger titles, lots more money, power, status, fame, celebrity, whatever it is, but you're equal. We all have red blood. We all have skin. We all have the same organs in our bodies. You're equal. That should give you confidence to do whatever you feel challenged to do. Sometimes gaining confidence requires establishing boundaries with people. Can you think of any areas you need to establish boundaries? I established a boundary with a friend a few years ago who was just very negative and got almost hateful during one of the elections. And I just didn't want to hear that negativity. And so I established a boundary about how often I would talk to that person. And that gave me confidence to know that I was taking care of myself, wasn't I? Because let's face it, if somebody's pouring out all this negativity on you, you don't feel any self-care within that. Yeah, exactly, Michelle. A lot of times it's family and relationships, isn't it? Tony and Michelle both need to establish boundaries with their mom. I had to do that when my mom was sick because she would start calling me every day. She didn't drive. She never drove. And I lived in the same town as her at the time up in Ohio. And she would call me at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday when I was working, even though I was self-employed, I was working. People don't understand that. And she'd say, can you go to the grocery store for me and get bananas? And I did that for a while. And you know what I did? I enabled her to be dependent on me like that. I think part of it was that she was lonely. So I tried to make sure I would go to visit her in the evenings and on weekends. But yeah, I had to establish boundaries. Oh, Michelle, you might be right. Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it, from what we've talked about? Yeah. But that doesn't it give you confidence when you do that? Now, hear me very clearly. I'm not talking about being mean to people. I'm not talking about being self-centered. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about established boundaries so that you feel like you can move through your life in the best way. That will build your confidence level. When we establish, sometimes I'm just going to say this, there may be some people in the room right now, you need to establish boundaries with your boss. Because guess what? They keep loading work on, you keep doing it, they're going to keep piling it on. Now, I'm not talking about being lazy or anything like that. I expect you to work hard. Your boss probably does too, but they don't know that you can't handle what you've got on your plate if you don't tell them because you've handled it all this time. Somebody said to me once, yeah, but what do I say? Well, you say, here are the 3 things that you've given me in the last week and I won't be able to get them all done by Friday. Which one would you like me to leave off? That's a boundary, isn't it? Yes, exactly. We create our own, in reality, Tony, we are our own worst enemy when it comes to boundaries and building our own confidence. It goes back to that self-talk again and all those kinds of things. We're really our worst enemy in some of these areas, aren't we? I had somebody say to me once, yeah, but nobody else will do it. Well, if it's not important to anybody else in your organization to do it, then maybe it's not important. And she looked at me like, you've got horns. I mean, she thought I was just crazy to say that. There was something she wanted to do in her life. She wanted to go to school. And because she was involved in this organization and nobody else would do this particular activity, she felt like she couldn't go to school. So she finally, this is so funny because you're talking about building your own monster, creating your own monster. She quit that activity. She called them and she said, I'm not going to be able to do that because I'm going to go to college. And they said, okay. She didn't know how to respond. They found somebody else to do it. She quit school after about 3 months because she found that what really filled her cup was doing it, whatever that activity was in that organization, not school. She was doing school because she felt like that was expected of her. So she built confidence by actually, quote, failing at school, because what really gave her confidence was being involved in this activity. But she had created her own monster by thinking she was the only person that could handle that activity. And she became a martyr and a victim until she finally said, you know what, I really need to go to school. But then she realized what was really important to her. And we need to all do that too. Limit your exposure. And when I talk about exposure, limit your exposure to those people who don't build you up. That's never going to build your confidence. You may have to be around them to some extent. Maybe it's coworkers, supervisors, people in your family, certain friends that you love them dearly, but they do not build you up. Limit your exposure to them. I would even challenge you to limit your exposure to the news. I didn't say get rid of it. I said limit your exposure. I've never felt confident when I listen in my own self, when I listen to all the negativity on the news. I've never felt confident in my own self. Now, this is just for me, Linda Bruno, personally, when I watch negative television shows. Maybe they're about horrible crimes, or they make fun of people all the time. I remember years ago when The Weakest Link came out. To me, that was one of the first, quote, reality shows or whatever you want to call it. But I watched one episode and I enjoyed learning the different things they were answering. But when that lady said, you are the weakest link, I looked at my husband and I said, I don't think we need any more of that in today's world. And I never watched it again. So limit your exposure to the things that make you feel less confident in yourself. That's so important. But here's a really important question. We've only talked about this for an hour. I know it's not going to change your life dramatically, what I've said, unless you apply it. So that's the question. What are you going to do in the next 30 days that will help you build your confidence? Would you type that into the chat box, please? What are you going to do in the next 30 days? And I'm not saying change you as a person. I'm saying it's going to build your confidence. Tony's going to work on planning my care. I think you mean self-care, Tony, but I'm not sure. We can all use more of that. What else are you going to do, folks? If you don't change anything today, your confidence level isn't going to change. Why would it? Rachel said, speak up more often, work more on my self-care. There you go. A lot of self-care in there, isn't there? You feel more confident when you're taking care of yourself because you feel like you care about yourself. That surprises me. Thank you all for sharing that, because usually people groan when I talk about that. And I talk about self-care in a lot of my programs. It doesn't necessarily have to do with confidence always, but I talk about it a lot because to me, you can't be your best self unless you take care of yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, that lessens your confidence level. It lessens how you can live your best life, right? Avoid getting stuck on negative self-talk. That's a big one for me, Justin. I still do it. I probably do it 70% less than I used to, but it still pops up from my upbringing and my past experiences. Kay's going to set boundaries with your son. Yeah, family and relationships are tough. And you don't have to do something real big, do you? You just have to take baby steps to set those boundaries. I want you to just see this. Don't wait until everything is just right. It'll never be perfect. There's always going to be challenges, obstacles, less than perfect conditions. So what? Did you hear that? So what? Get started now. With each step you take, you'll grow stronger and stronger, more and more skilled, more and more self-confident, and more successful. And when I talk about successful, I have no even a little inkling of financial success put into that statement. To me, it's about being a success as a person of who you are. Please take care of yourself. Do what you need to do to build your confidence. If it starts to leak, step back and see where it's leaking and rebuild it again. Thank you, Tony Ann. I appreciate that. Love to see you guys all here. That you guys is a northern term. Sorry about that. Love to see you folks all here. And I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thanks, everybody. Let me know if I can help in any way. Just drop me an email.